Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Shall we start the class?
I think you can start.
Yes, okay. And let the other students kind of join in as and
Yeah.
when required. I think that should be fine. So, all right. Good afternoon, students. Today, we are going to be looking into one of the very creative tools that is used very commonly across the industry in the new generative AI. And that's something in the last few classes we have talked about generative AI in general. Also, what are the various tools that can be used. So today we'll specifically look at one tool which is called as DALI, right? And this is available for everybody to use. And we will see how creatives can be created using DALI and generative AI. And this is one of the biggest and most popular tools that is available in the market right now. So hence, it would be good to see how to use these tools, and we all can experiment and try these tools in our day-to-day life as well, right? So let's look at the video. Let's listen to the video and see how step by step DALI as a tool is going to be introduced to us, and what we can do with this tool. What are the different creative processes, the aesthetic senses, the common steps that is taken in DALI to kind of create, etc. is something what we will see today, right? So let me share my screen. All right, is my screen visible now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay. And now I'll play the video.
Imagine being able to write a few words, click a button, and then be able to generate almost any image you can imagine. Sounds like science fiction, right? Well, the truth is, this technology is already here. DALL-E, a generative AI model, can produce incredible images from just a few words. And I found it game-changing. Hi, I'm Chad Nelson, a creative director who's worked for over 2 decades on films and shows and video games. And in the last year, I've been using DALL-E extensively, and it's transformed my entire creative process. Now in this course, I'm going to teach you all the ins and outs of DALL-E and the art of prompting so you too can master this cutting-edge tech. I'm excited to share it with you, so let's get started.
So this is typically called as the text to image. Now, with the various generative AI tools, with DALI, you can actually give a prompt, which is a text, and then that will convert into an image. So let's see how that's done and what are the different steps you would want to kind of take.
Everyone knows that feeling when the light bulb goes off in your head, when that idea strikes to make something, paint something, to create. And for centuries, that journey from the creative spark in your mind to a complete finished work has largely remained the same. Now let's break it down. The idea hits you, so you begin that process of formulating those thoughts with sketches and drawings and writings. You're pushing the ideas into something more tangible. We call this the ideation phase. And you could spend hours or potentially even months working out concepts. But the goal of all that refining is to conceptualize your idea before you enter the execution phase. And this is where you take your concept and actually build it, paint it, write it. And this phase is time consuming, and it might even require more people, to assist. And yeah, changes will happen in this phase, but those changes might be more expensive and certainly a lot more time consuming. And eventually you arrive at the final product. I've been using DALL-E and AI tools for about a year, and the greatest difference I've witnessed is how these tools have completely altered my process. A tool like DALL-E takes me directly from ideation to execution, and now I'm ideating with execution quality visuals. So I'm essentially going from light bulb to finished quality in seconds. In a way, it's like I've been given superpowers.
So typically for a creative designer or people who are designing, getting an idea itself is something which has always been a challenge, because one might take a long time to actually get an idea. But with tools like generative AI, that problem is getting solved. What you need to do is you need to prompt and talk about the various things that is going on in your mind and put that input in the tool, and the output is going to come out as the final product. And that's really going to be a game changer, and is already becoming a game changer, because this is what is helping the design and the creative teams a lot, because they're getting things rolled out faster.
The speed at which I can work through ideas is now staggering. Think about what this means for you in your given creative workflow. For me personally, I have a fairly good understanding of how much I can output in a given month or year. Doing concepts for a film or designing visuals for a video game, they could take weeks, if not months. But now, my output is exponentially increased. Okay, to summarize, regardless of your skill level or the industry in which you work, these tools are for you. So let's dive in, because in the next video, we'll start with the fundamentals of where to begin your journey with AI. Now, you might be asking yourself, what can these AI tools actually do? Or do I have to be a trained professional artist to use DALL-E? Well, before we dive into the depths of DALL-E and the AI tools, let's take a quick moment to answer both questions. First, the possibilities. What can DALL-E do? Now, in my professional life, I'm a creative director for a wide variety of projects. I've designed brand logos, directed advertising campaigns, social media campaigns, directed animated films, even designed a few video games. I've worked with photography and film and digital media and 3D animation. So when I was granted beta access to OpenAI's DALL-E, I wanted to test every creative application I could think of, just to see, could AI enter this industry or this business? I tested conceptual design, illustration, architecture, fashion, photography, just to name a few. And with each test, I found DALL-E to be an incredible tool for generating ideas and inspiration.
The key point to note here is it talks about DALL-E gives you all possible types of creatives, like your animation, architecture, fashion, product design, graphic design, illustrations, photography, right? And also conceptual arts. So it's not one dimensional, it is multi-dimensional. And that's important to keep in mind.
And potentially even finished works. All right, so in the coming videos, we'll be exploring some of these applications in greater depth. But now, back to the question, who are these AI tools for? Are they for non-artists or trained professionals? Well, I actually believe the answer is both. For non-professionals, these tools are as transformative as the camera phone in your pocket. You likely never studied photography or learned the chemical process of developing film, but now you're taking more pictures than ever, and likely some with exceptional quality. AI tools like DALL-E are very much the same thing. Once you have the basics down, they're going to allow you to create almost anything you can imagine. And if you're a professional, these tools will literally give you superpowers. I've often described it as if you've now wiretapped your mind directly to a computer, and the barriers to creativity, they nearly vanish. All right, so to summarize, regardless of your skill level or the industry in which you work, I believe these tools are for you. So let's dive in, because in the next video, we're going to start with the fundamentals of where to begin your journey with AI. Given you're watching this video, you've heard of Dall-E. But many of you don't realize its name serves as the ode to Salvador Dali and Pixar's Wall-E, the first being a pioneer of surrealist art, and the latter being a clunky robot who sought human-like companionship. It's an interesting comparison when you think about it, how AI is fitting in with humanity today. All right, so what exactly is Dall-E and this landscape of AI generative art? Well, let's start with some basics. Let's say you wanted to create a poster of an astronaut on the moon. If you type that request into a search engine like Google, it will search through millions, if not billions, of existing images, finding all those which are tagged with raccoons or astronauts and the moon. And it'll present to you what it thinks are the best images it can find, which contain as many of those keywords as possible. Dall-E is fundamentally different. When you type that request into Dall-E, it's as if you're asking an artist to create that image for you, from scratch. Because like a human who grows up seeing all sorts of images of raccoons and astronauts and the moon, it will create a custom and original visual for you based on all these images that it knows or has been taught. Think about that. Dall-E's like a human, which has been given a massive archive of memories, and it will happily create for you original art by tapping into those memories to present to you something new. Now, there's several ethical concerns about this, and we're going to discuss that in a full video later, so hold that thought. But for now, let me show you some of the examples of this incredible range of Dall-E. All right, so let's say we wanted to make an image of a lonely robot holding a red balloon. We call these requests or descriptions a prompt. And when you hit enter or generate, in a few seconds, Dall-E will present you 4 images. Now these are looking pretty cool, but notice the style. We didn't really specify anything, and it looks somewhat like a computer painting. But let's modify that prompt and now specify a pen and ink drawing. And as you can see, Dall-E will actually deliver on that. They look like they were created by pen and ink. Well, let's try another medium, say watercolor. And these definitely look like a watercolor painting. Or can it do maybe a realistic photograph? Well, it certainly can. I mean, it almost looks like we actually took a photograph of this little toy robot on the ground. We can even go a little closer and experiment with macro photography. Well, what if I wanted to change the time of day and explore golden hour? Well, again, Dall-E has delivered, and now I have 4 brand new original images. Now, in each of these, the robot kind of had a similar quality of like this almost vintage metal toy, but let's try something a little bit more modern and go with a black and white minimalist robot. Now, as you can see, I mean, this is not a Google image search. It's a unique visual creation based upon millions and millions of images recreated into something brand new and original. Now, one of the things I'm often asked is,
So what we saw right now is almost like, you put in the prompt, you tell the system what kind of final image or what is the thought in your mind, and then the system, based on the multiple and millions of images that is stored, will share those output with you. Then you further amplify your prompt, you further modify your prompt, and then ask the system if there are those tweaks that can be made. Like, for example, in the in example, we saw that changing to daylight or changing the robot from a generic metal to the more minimalistic one, right? So this makes it more creative, and it gives you multiple options. Hence, one of the key things to remember in any generative AI tool, whether it's a DALL-E or anything else, to keep in mind is it's about how much you are prompting, how much are you telling the system, how much are you telling the machine, which is understanding your prompt and then coming up with the end products.
why don't my results look as good, or what's wrong with my prompts? The simple answer is there's an art to prompting. First, you have to remember you're working with a computer. Yes, OpenAI has done a phenomenal job in breaking down natural language, but you'll find the best results follow a logical description pattern. Here's the way I like to work. You start with the main subject matter, the thing that any viewer will first notice in the image. Then if there's anything else, like secondary elements, then add those. Then I get into the details, where the camera's located, the time of day or the lighting, and the mood. And then lastly, I'll describe the style, such as pixel art or oil painting. All right, let's give this a try. I'm wanting to create a happy felt cat sitting in a colorful garden. I'm going to add then the details with a time of day, just daytime. And then the style, let's go with just macro photography. We've seen that, so let's continue. And there you go. So you can see, DALL-E delivered exactly what I asked for. And if you follow this approach, I think you're going to find you're going to get far more consistent results. So that's a high-level overview of DALL-E and how AI generative art works. In the next video, we'll dive deeper into prompt creation so you can hone your individual aesthetic style. In the last video, I gave you my ideal structure for a good prompt, but it's these two elements, and primarily the last one, that will give you the most dramatic visual differences and is the key to giving you the most consistency between your generations. So let's dive in. Visual styles. First, there are dozens and dozens of visual styles. Some are based on artistic mediums, such as oil painting or photography. Others are based on visual genres, like anime or pop art. And styles can be regional, like Latin or Asian art, or historical periods of time, like the Victorian era. So let's demonstrate this. I'm going to start with a prompt, a vintage toy race car on a table. And all we're going to do is change the style between several artistic mediums. We'll start with a charcoal drawing. All right, let's look at an oil painting, pen and ink, photograph, and a wood sculpture. As you can see, it's the same subject, but with wildly different visual styles. All right, so let's take this one step further. Rather than just an oil painting, let's try subgenres like Cubism, or Dutch Masters, or Expressionism. And once again, DALL-E produced incredibly different results, capturing the nuances between each of these genres, maybe not to an art historian's liking, but still fairly well. Now let's try the same approach with photography, and we'll explore a few subgenres here, starting with Polaroid, or pinhole photography, or lastly, and most commonly, 35mm photography on film. And I absolutely love the result here because it captures this soft focus. So as you can see, there's a wide array of styles which DALL-E knows, and knows quite well. And if you'd like, pause the screen here for a moment and take note of any that catch your eye. And remember, this list is only just a sampling of the styles that DALL-E knows, and each can be combined in fascinating ways. All right, now let's talk about visual details. In addition to the style, there are other visual ways to customize and hone your generations. And per my prompt guide, I like to drop them in between the subject and the style. So what kind of details am I talking about? Well, here's a quick list. I'm going to start with lighting. I usually like to define the quality of light for an image, like daylight or golden hour, or flash photography. Now, camera refers to the location of the camera or how you are viewing your subject, say close-up or wide angle or looking up from below. Color describes the tonal quality of the image, say black and white to muted colors or cool tones. And lastly, there's mood, which you might use to give a more emotional description to your image.
Now, all this that you see here on this screen, the light, camera, color, mood, is something which we are also quite familiar with. Like if you use your Instagram, or if you use your any other your Apple phone or any other tools which talks about the light and the camera, the color, etc., you will actually be familiar with all of these, right? Now, what the author is saying is pick one from each one of the column and then put as a prompt in DALL-E.
Now, it's not required to include details from each of these columns, but if you want more precision in your generations, I'd say give it a detail from one or more. To demonstrate, I've taken the prompt, a wicker basket of fruit on a table, with the style being a photograph, and all I've changed are the details from daylight to dusk to sepia tone to a fisheye lens with high contrast light, and lastly, a dystopian moody image. And when you look at these, adjusting the details is like having Photoshop as an AI. I mean, it's the same subject, but wildly different visual results. Now, I suggest to anyone starting with DALL-E, experiment with these styles and details, however you like. Push it. See if you can find a style it doesn't know. And if you do find one, shoot me an email. I'd love to know. All right, now let's talk about visual consistency. How do you get more consistent results from one generation to the next? And the answer is, when doing a series, try to keep the details and style as consistent as possible, changing only the primary subject. For example, let's try this as my details and style. Artificial light, cool muted colors, soft focus 35mm photography. And I'll start with the subject, a sad vintage robot in a factory. And here we go. Notice the color temperature and the mood and the visual style. All right, now let's change that subject to a full body view of a vintage robot running through a factory and compare the result. Pretty similar, right? Let's try 2 more prompts. A close-up rear view of a vintage robot in a factory. All right, that's good. And an assembly line in a robot factory. All right, now let's compare them all together. And what you'll see are 4 images that look similar enough that it feels like the same world. All right, let's try one more, as if we're building an architectural mood board. I'm going to set the details and style to a modern architectural home built of wood and glass, set in the winter mountains, morning light, and high-end architectural photography. And I'll start with the subject looking outside an expansive patio and infinity pool. Generate, and look at that, 2 beautiful mood board renders. Now let's change the subject to an exterior view of an expansive patio and infinity pool, and boom, look, 2 more generations that are great, and all 4 work incredibly well together. It actually is a pretty compelling mood board. Now, in closing, it's important to remember that DALL-E treats each generation as unique. It will not remember an object from one generation to the next. Now, that might be fixed in time, but at the moment, generations are all individual images.
Very important to keep in mind. So whatever is the prompt you are giving and whatever is the image that is getting generated is an individual one. The next prompt you give, the next image kind of generates. And that's how, you keep giving multiple prompts, multiple permutation and combination, and multiple images and creatives gets generated.
However, with focused details combined with a good style description, you can produce more visually synchronous results. But what happens when that's still not working and a prompt isn't working out for you at all? Well, we'll dive into that in our next video.
So while we have learned the introduction and the pushing your aesthetics and how do you typically put in the prompt, let's actually take a very common use case that most of us probably face in our day-to-day life, challenges presentation in a social media post. How would you typically get that creative of a social media post, and how would you find out an actual solution? So let's see an example of the use in a more day-to-day life.
We've now covered quite a bit of ground, from the basics of prompting to building consistency and the common mistakes. I've got a challenge for you. Let's take what we've learned and apply it to 2 common scenarios. First, visuals for a presentation, and second, a lifestyle image for a social media post. All right, let's dive in. Challenge 1, presentation visuals. Now, I imagine you've all been in this scenario. You have a presentation with numerous talking points, and you need to spice it up with some compelling visuals. Well, in the prior world, unless you or your company owned the photos or images, your only options were licensing stock photos from a library, or using the default shapes and images in the tools, or worse yet, lifting something off the internet that you don't even own. Well, thankfully, those days are done, and now you can create the perfect visuals for decks with AI. All right, so for this challenge, we've been asked to create visuals for a global data communication network presentation, and we need 2 images. The first needs to convey data traveling through the internet, and the second, an image that captures data traveling at a global level. They need to look similar in style, both high-tech with a cooler tone palette, and both need to convey a sense of speed. All right, for the next challenge, we're going to tackle an image for a social media post. Now let's say our company is offering a vacation giveaway to Paris, and this is our social media post announcing the contest. So we need to show someone in Paris, along with some iconic imagery. And I can't think of anything more iconic than the Eiffel Tower. Now, this ad is targeted towards women, so it'd be best to include a woman in the image. Good luck, and don't be afraid to experiment. And I'll show you how I solved it in the next video. See you there. Now, I just gave you 2 challenges. The first, visuals for a data communication presentation, and the second, a lifestyle image for a social media post. So, how'd you do? Well, let me show you how I would have solved each challenge, starting with the first, presentation visuals. Now, to recap, here were the goals. We needed high-tech visuals, cooler tones, and importantly, we needed to convey a sense of speed. So let's start with the first one, data traveling rapidly through the internet. Now, I'm going to start with a prompt, computer data traveling through the internet as digital art. And the reason I chose that is because you'll see it looks something like it's out of the Matrix or, out of some sort of high-tech presentation. And I like that it actually went with the blue colors automatically. I didn't even have to set that yet. But what I don't like is it looks a little like gibberish, like the numbers, the ones and zeros are not coming out as clearly as I hoped. So let me just add to the prompt ones and zeros and hit generate. And now look at that. I see 1 and zeros far more prominently. All right, I think I like this one in the upper right. Okay, I'm going to save that one. Now for the second image, data traveling at a global level, I'm going to start with the prompt, computer data traveling towards the Earth, digital art. And notice I kept the style the same. Now, these are good, but notice how the globe looks like a full color render in some of these? This is where you might want to add a little more detail in the prompt. That could help. So I'm going to add around a 3D digital globe. And now these are much better. I like these. I think I'm going to choose the one on the top left. So I'll save this one. Now looking at them both together, yeah, both images look visually dynamic and bold. Yeah, they work well together and they offer the impact I was hoping for in aiding the message. Ah, nice. All right, challenge 2, the social media post. Now, we were asked to create a social media post announcing a contest for a Paris vacation, using a single iconic image and targeting a female demographic. So, great. So here's how I'd tackle it. Now, I'd begin with the prompt, a woman walks in Paris towards the Eiffel Tower, it's daytime, and it's 35 millimeter travel photography. And these are the results. Now, they're good. I like them, but maybe we should try something like the mood is a little off. Let's try adding golden hour and see if that gets a little more of the romance out of, our Paris imagery. And okay, now I like this. It's starting to capture that magic, but I'm not seeing the joy in our prize winner's face. I mean, the women all walking towards the Eiffel Tower are good, but I really want to see that happiness, that glee that she just won this trip. So I'm going to change the prompt again, and this time I'm going to focus on the subject. So now I'm going to type a close-up of a woman's happy face as she walks in Paris near the Eiffel Tower. I'm going to keep the rest the same. And now let's hit generate and okay, see, this is much closer to what I was thinking. I love the expressions. I see joy. I see, you can see enough of the Eiffel Tower. It's clearly iconic. Everyone will know that's what we're seeing. And I think I like this one in the lower left best. All right, so I'm going to save that. And great. And here's how it looks in the final post. Love it. Excellent. So there you go. These are 2 scenarios I've certainly used in my creative work. But before we move on to the next lesson, feel free to experiment some more. Because next, we're going to delve into more advanced techniques, such as photorealistic portraits and in-painting.
So we'll not delve into more in depth into painting and altering images with photorealism, because that's much more advanced. But the takeaway here would be if you have to use DALL-E in your day-to-day life, for example, either creating a presentation or creating some sort of a artwork or creating some sort of a social media post, etc., then what would you do and how would you do and how would you do it quickly? I think that's the takeaway, right? So I will stop sharing and I'll check if any one of you have any questions regarding DALL-E or regarding how to use these tools for a quick, AI generated creatives. Anybody, any questions? Because you should be using this in your day-to-day lessons, in your day-to-day activities. And once you are done with this basics, then you should be going to the more advanced ones. And hence, like, we are not discussing the advanced ones here today. We are only talking about the basics and how you would want to use the basics. Is there any other any other questions from the team today? Any questions on using DALL-E or the generative AI generated images? No? Okay. All right. If there are no questions, then I think we can pause and we can kind of stop. I would ask you to kind of use these tools in your day-to-day work, and especially as students, I think you will have a lot of projects that you'll be kind of working on, creating presentations, creating arts and photography, etc. And this is applicable to anything that you are doing, whether you are learning a certain course which you are going to be kind of implementing in a particular project, or in any kind of presentations, or in your internships, or etc. You can actually use these tools and to kind of create those presentations which are really going to be making a meaningful impact, right? So that's what I would kind of encourage you, right? And we can probably pause our class today. Kioni's Karnataka team. Kioni's Karnataka team, are you there?
Hello, 1 minute, sir.
Yes.
1 minute, sir.
Sir?
Hello, are you there?
Yes, sir. Sir.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So I think we didn't record the session today, I think. That was missed.
Yes,
Right?
sir.
Maybe what I can do is I can share this link separately in case you want to kind of share with the students. So what we did was the basics, and I think we have covered that, right?
Okay, sir.
So yeah, so maybe we can end our classes a little early today, because I think there is a festivity and there are some other things as well, right?
Okay.
I'll share those links separately, and if the students want to kind of reach out, they can do that.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Okay, fine. All right. Thank you.
I'll share with the students.
Yes, please. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.